introduce myself and my other member, so I'll just go quickly and then I'll give a little background. But my name is Bruno. I'm the Director of Schools Career and Employer Engagement at the Boston PIC. I'll say a little bit more later.
Hi, I'm James Beckwith. I'm the President and CEO of Five Star Bank, and I'm the incoming 2014 Sacramento Metro Chamber Chair.
Excellent. So Bob and Nancy, who you've seen speak, has asked me to come and just talk a little bit about, and we really hit on it, the role of the intermediary and why it's important. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. So I run the largest piece of the Boston PIC, which is the Schools Career and Employer Engagement. So most people know Boston for their summer jobs program, so I have a staff of about 22. And we are responsible for placing 3,000 kids in internships and jobs for the summer. We have about 700 to 800 working during the school year, depending on, the economy and some of our corporate partners. But that is all possible because of the group, and what I think when we talk about moving to scale, about what is an intermediary. I know it's an ugly word. We like to, some people use backbone organization. But think about an intermediary and think about what has been said before, is that we really are known for brokering, connecting, measuring, and convening. Now there'll be some other words that you'll throw in there, but what we've seen from today is that a lot of the business people are saying, I can't have 5,000 people calling me about internships and jobs. Just can't do it, can't happen. We also have school people that are like, we're really busy, we gotta educate these kids. And then we have other people that are always wanting a piece of the pie. Oh, we can do this, we can do job shadow, we can do mock interviews, we can do this. So, in Boston we have the intermediary called the PIC, and that's my crew. So just a quick breakdown of what my team looks like. And I guess I get most of the credit, but my team is awesome, and they do unbelievable work. So the first main piece of my team is called the career specialists. They are in the schools, and they are getting kids job ready, and we are all on the same page no matter what school you're at in Boston, whether you're at the roughest school where most of you guys probably wouldn't want to be within a block of it, and then you run away. Or you could be at one of the exam schools where kids have to take an exam to get in and you think it's like a mini Harvard. It's one of the oldest schools in the country. So we have career specialists in all schools. We are embraced and loved by almost every headmaster, unless we have an issue, but we usually don't. So they're getting the kids ready. We are doing everything soup to nuts to get these kids so that we can send them to an employer and that they will be embraced, and then we can get a good return on investment. So you don't have to be a PIC kid, meaning that it's not mandatory that you be part of our program. However, in Boston, if you want a high-paying internship and job, you better know one of my career specialists, because you're not going to get a job on your own. The teen employment rate is awful. So you have to come to see my people and go through the workshops. So it's job etiquette, it's filling out an application, it's resume workshop, which is always ongoing. It's the new thing, which is getting through the kiosk or the application process, and then it's just paperwork. Most of our employers will treat our kids like a part-time or a full-time employee. So you have to go through a background check, a drug screen, whatever we have to do to get you into State Street Bank, we will do. So that's our first layer. I have 15 career specialists. Some of them have more than one school. They're responsible for placing about 200 kids apiece, but that means we're working with about 300 at each place, because there are some kids that drop off. In Boston, you don't need to be quote-unquote legal to be in a Boston public school, so we have to talk about paperwork issues, because we can't put you in a private sector company without that. Sorry about my back. So that's what we're working with. So just quickly back to our panel. So every kid will get certified by our PIC career specialist. You will not be sent on an interview unless my career specialist says you met certain criteria. That means you're job ready. That doesn't mean you're going to be a good worker, trust me, because when you have 3,000 kids, you get a couple bumps in the road. but we'll work on that. So everyone, employer-wise, feels comfortable knowing that our kids at least will interview up to standards. Okay, so that's the first piece of this intermediary that we're starting to put together and what that looks like. The other piece, and I only have 3 or 4 of them, and then I'll play some of the role as well, is what we call employer account managers. One in finance, healthcare, IT, and then we all take a role in other sectors. So we make up 4. My assistant directors help me. They are working with these companies to identify where the kids could work and be a benefit to the company, help them with job descriptions, help them train the supervisor, so we do supervisor training. So we all know teenagers, we're not afraid of them. There are some people at some banks, they don't know what to do with a teenager. They might have one at home. But they don't know what to do. And the worst
thing... It's hard enough there, yeah.
So what we do is we talk to them about what you are going to do on an internship and job with these teenagers. We also support you you have access to the career specialist 24/7. We work through the summer, obviously, it's our busiest time. So we do supervisor trainings, we share job descriptions across, so State Street Bank will hire 200 and something of my kids, but sometimes Citizens Bank or a smaller bank will be like, what does State Street do? How are they employing these kids? We just we call State Street, like, hey, so-and-so wants to see job descriptions. Oh, please, fine, we're all part of the same group. We share job descriptions, very important. Our employer account managers also are the main point of contact. So in Boston, you don't have 75 people calling this young lady over there asking for an internship or a job shadow day, or to do mock interviews, or to be on an advisory board. That doesn't happen. I mean, I'm sure it might happen if it's from a private school or somewhere else, but most contact comes through us. And the employers also say, oh, if it's somebody else, thank you for calling. You should probably call the PIC to see how this fits in. We don't want to put anyone in a bad spot. We know how hard it is to say no. So when we're talking about this backbone organization, what we're trying to do is make it easy as possible to get kids into these work-based learning plan opportunities, and as easy as possible for the employers to have a great experience. We want you to get, minimum wage in Boston is $8 an hour. We want you to get your $8 an hour worth from these kids. Now, it might not happen in the first week, but you will get it. And our kids have said to outpace the college kids because they are job ready. Some college kids think they should be presidents and CEOs. Just because you go to BU doesn't mean too. I'm being taped, so I got to be politically correct, right? So, but we have IT kids that blow people away. We also have our kids being from Boston, speak many languages. We have kids from many different nations. That's really helpful if you're in a hospital and you need an interpreter. Bank of America has really caught on because they're making them greeters and tellers and pairing them in different locations. So, Bank of America realized that in Chinatown, no one was using their bank. You got to hire somebody that speaks the language people. We have kids $8 an hour, but you know what? Our kids have skills. You need to pay them a little more. They pay them 10. We'll talk about that stuff. So this is just a little bit just to try to make your life easier. We can talk about the bigger picture, but that's what I'm just setting the stage so you know a little bit of my background, and we can talk a little bit about the importance of the intermediary. But I want John to kind of go and have a couple of words, because I could talk all day.
Josh, very robust organization you have there, and it's great to hear all the things that you're doing in Boston and how you're getting, what'd you say, 3,000 kids employed and through several different sectors. So that's certainly would be a great model for us to look at from our region's perspective. A little bit about myself. I run a bank, a regional business bank. We're centered in the capital region here, but we have offices up in North State, Reading, and also in Chico. I'm also a volunteer. I was 3 years ago, I was the chairman of what is now known as NextEd, which is our intermediary, I guess you could call it that. NextEd is kind of an organization that's comprised at the board level about half employers and half have folks in the education space, and this continuum is all the way from high school districts all the way to community college and also university level. So it's a very, it's a growing organization, it's a robust organization, and has a pretty big initiative as we go into 2014. But let's talk a little bit about our region and what our region's really trying to do. Last year, excuse me, this year, it's almost last year, but in March 2013, the region and several different economic development organizations created a plan. Those of you that are from the region may know this plan. It's called Next Economy. And this plan was really created to help bring us out of the doldrums of the recession in which we were severely impacted here within the capital region. We lost 145,000 jobs. And this plan, and one of the pillars of this plan, is to develop and to nurture an outstanding workforce, if you will. And there's several initiatives that we have in the region that are being developed through NextEd. And one of them is the Capital Region Career Academies Initiative. And this is really theme-based education that connects with employers that can range all the way from health sciences to business or financial services and whatnot. And the reason why this is so important for our region is that our plan, our Next Economy plan, is really built on industry clusters, if you will. We've got advanced manufacturing, ag and food, clean energy, education and knowledge creation, information and communications technology, and life sciences and health services. So the goal is to create these academies that are directly connected with these particular clusters. So there's a deep nexus at the high school level and even in the junior high level with respect to these particular career paths. So this is the plan. There's several career academies going on right now. I think that there's information, I think, on the NextEd website about, what our environment looks like in the region about career academies, and it's fairly robust if you look at what's going on down in El Pro and in Sac Unified. There's all types of examples, and I don't want to miss any particular school district that has an example of it. But the thought is to help grow it. And we're going to try and grow that through, if you will, NextEd and its endeavors through its Career Academy initiative. So from a business perspective, from a banker perspective, we need an educated workforce. We need to have employees and young folks that are really turned on by whatever their goals and aspirations are with respect to their careers. And I think this type of work really helps that. We as a bank, we do have high school students working for us. So we've actually developed that through a very interesting organization. Some of you may know about it. It's Cristo Rey, and they have a work education plan. And I think we get at least once a month. Once a week. We've got somebody with us on site, and some of our best employees, always motivated, always enthusiastic. And we're very pleased with that program. But we'd like to grow that. We'd like to have more involvement, especially from the public system, to see how we might connect. At the community college district, that might be a great place to start. From time to time, I know that we have, and my counterparts within the region, have part-time working students from higher ed, whether it be from Cal State or UC Davis or any of the other colleges and universities within our region. So it's from a business perspective and particularly from a Metro Chamber perspective, we're really driving workforce education as to become a top line of importance within the region. And we think it's about time it happens.
So I always like to ask questions or ask for questions after 15 minutes, so I don't want people to lose them. Yes?
What do you see as a region in Sacramento? Is it Sacramento County, or is it multiple counties?
Oh, it's Sacramento County, Yolo County, El Dorado County, Placer County, Yuba County.
What made you decide those counties? Did they have something that was a natural fit, or geographically?
Geographically, population density, transportation corridors, cluster connectivity, if you will. Several different metrics in terms of that's how we view the region.
Yes.
To what extent, if any, are you tapping into adjudicated youth?
So we take anybody. So if you go to Boston Public Schools, you can be part of our program.
So you're not going into juvenile halls, for example, those youth who are in juvenile hall or incarcerated?
We don't do we have a different program for them, and that is another team that's not under me. But we work with any youth that's in Boston Public High School. So if you have a record, you know, unfortunately, some of our kids might have an ankle bracelet or whatever it is. That doesn't eliminate them from some of our programs. Like, you won't be able to work at State Street Bank because you're not going to pass the court, but we'll be able to get you into something. And that's just being completely honest.
Right. And so for here in Sacramento, for the Sacramento initiatives that you're working on, are you tapping into that population?
You know, I'm not aware that there's a direct connection with respect to adjudicated youth. It's certainly something that the Next Ed folks can look into. But that's a good point. I'll make a note of that and pass that on. Thank you.
No, yeah, go ahead.
So Sacramento County Office of Education is the education partner on the Crane Initiative, and then it's hubbed out to the other county offices. So we work, each county office works directly with the adjudicated youth, and so they all have career initiatives, but it's definitely part of the regional approach to make sure that the adjudicated youth are supported.
Well, I just add to this subject about adjudicated youth. I'm director of the Sacramento Regional Conservation Board, one of 14 in the state of California, nonprofit. We were actually founded by the Sacramento Metro Chamber 30 years ago. And we take young adults 18 to 25. 95% of them have dropped out of high school. We're a campus of a statewide charter high school. And if they're willing to show up and work towards turning their life around and getting on track, we'll take them.
So that I want to just kind of follow on what Dwight just mentioned. It's for those of you who aren't aware, you can see their trucks just everywhere running around every day. You know, they do all the recycling, certainly do the recycling for us, so they're in our building frequently and whatnot. It's really a very robust organization, and it's one of the better things that our bank gets involved with. So it's really a great feeling to see, especially going to the graduation. If you want an emotional moment, go to their graduation, because it's just absolutely wonderful.
Josh, you mentioned, and I wonder if you can share a little bit more detail, because I think it's a key component. Employer account management. Okay, I think when I look at what we're doing in our region, we just got so many different people going in so many different directions that you know, if you asked an employer how many calls he got this week from like an employer account manager, as I might call it, a job developer, 5 or 6. Tell me a little bit about the background for those staff for you.
Sure.
And what you look for.
So there's a couple of things I look for. One of them that I've hired used to be an executive recruiter. And she just said it wasn't a fulfilling job for her. That, you know, she got, you know, people jobs and then they left, and it was like boiler room. It was like, you know, give me the lead, give me this, whatever. So, but she's really good at, you know, working with employers and setting a plan and timelines. But she also had this need to, you know, also kind of work with youth a little bit, or even set it up. So that's what she's looking for. Most of my employer account managers are usually, I'd say, like 28 to 32. So it's their, you know, first or second job out of college. They have some background working maybe with HR or, you know, something like that. So they kind of know when to push and when not to push. And then they also are usually from Boston and maybe have come from we get a lot of referrals. So, you know, this one woman also came from UMass Boston working in their internship program before she was an executive recruiter. I have, you know, another woman that used to work at the State House with economic development, and she just was, you know, she's part of my healthcare group. She just knew that industry well and knew that she could try to put people on the right path. It also helps from us, you know, when we talk about an intermediary, you have to look from, you know, the bottom and up. we have an advantage in Boston, and hopefully you guys will build it in Sacramento, that we have a board and council that is very powerful. So the head of State Street Bank is on it, the head of Partners Healthcare is on it, you know, the superintendent of schools, both community college presidents on it, so we have Bunker Hill and Roxbury Community College. So, and I can list on and on, I can share the list, but it makes a difference when you also do an ask. So, for example, you know, when we do our summer jobs ask, Dr. Gottlieb, the head of Partners, and the mayor co-sign this letter. And it goes out via email or mail to everybody. And then, believe it or not, the mayor will have us in a meeting in a room like this, and he'll be like, why isn't so-and-so participating? And I usually am like, well, they're not returning phone calls. He's like, okay. And then the next day, someone in his office or himself made that phone call to get them to participate. So as a backbone organization, you know, we're brokering, and we're convening, but we're also giving them credit, but also I have to give a couple of them a heads up. Guys, I'm going into a meeting, I'm not trying to put any pressure on you, but you're not on this list. Someone's going to give you a call. And what we do, and this is something that else that, you know, as an intermediary you guys should try to think about, is how do you give people credit? Everybody wants credit, okay? As an intermediary, if Neil was here, my boss, the executive director who's flying all around, we never get credit, but we always get the blame. So it's a thankless job. So, you know, if something goes right, everyone's like, yeah, that's great, we did a good job. If something goes wrong, it's Josh, are you kidding me? Like, what happened? And I'm like, wait a second, I wasn't even on the podium when you guys are like shaking hands and kissing babies. But you know, what we do too is, you know, and I have a couple of these, we do an annual report. And it shows about every part of the PIC and what we do and how big it is. I can pass some of them around. But we also, what we do is we call out our partners with their logos and what they've done. Now, we won't put numbers next to these. You know, State Street Bank would be at 202, Mass General's 125, I can list them. Airmark's at 100 and something. You know, that's the vendor for the Red Sox. But credit is really important, and branding and things like that. So that page I just showed you in here was in our annual report, and we handed these out at our annual meeting where over 600 people came. But then the Boston Business Journal gave us a page to basically reprint this one big page that everyone gets. Now, you think, oh, no one reads the Boston Business Journal? Business people read this, you know? And so I got calls like, how come I'm not on this list? And I'm like, the cutoff is 15. You gotta hire 15. So
who are the Red Sox?
I was going to bring this on my next circuit, but now you're saying, oh.
You're a career specialist.
Yeah.
They have workshops, which I think you mentioned they do a lot of soft skill workshops,
yeah.
Employability soft skills.
Yeah.
How much interaction between the employers that you're working with and that curriculum is there? Because I always see it as an evolving curriculum.
Yeah, it depends, to be honest with you, it depends on the school. So, you know, we have some schools, so for example, we have Tech Boston Academy. So we have kids that are being trained in IT jobs. Microsoft comes in and was like, these kids on their resume list X, Y, and Z, but they're at various levels, so an employer doesn't know what they're really getting. Why don't you send them to the Microsoft workshops and we can all get them on the same page. Also, the teachers are like, okay, do I really need to teach this? You know, is this out? Is, you know, C++ still, you know, what we want to do for programming, or is there something else? And then we also have industry leaders talk to our advisory boards about what we should be teaching or what we should be pushing. The jobs are always changing. You know, a lot of people here remember like 10, 12 years ago, nursing was hot. So we're getting kids into nursing. Well, nursing now has changed a little bit. I know it's still. I know my wife's a nurse and she doesn't want to work anymore, but that's another. So, but there's things that, you know, but IT is really, really hot. And there's other things. Because you can do IT at a small mom and pop, or you can do it at a hospital or a bank. So that's kind of the things. An intermediary also helps you have a conversation that when you broker things, people can get information and then we can kind of run with it. So there's not like, I'm talking to you and you can't hear me. You know what I mean? Like an intermediary says, okay, we're gonna get a meeting together, we're gonna do a best practices meeting with all of the summer jobs employers, let's just say, not all of them, there's too many, but, and just talk to me about, you know, what skills were the kids missing, what else do we need to do for the school year to have our kids be more employable? You know, a lot of our kids are in schools where this room would not look like what they're used to. You know, we send kids to the corporate world and we get calls, because I was a career specialist, and they go, all I see is white people. And I'm like, why are you whispering? Why, you know, and I'm like, where are you? And they're like, we're in the, like, in the cubicle. I'm like, okay. So it's stuff like that. Like, I'm like, oh, so I have to run over there. But some of that stuff is all that we have to talk about with our kids and kind of move on from there.
So one last question, I'll quiet there. You mentioned that call, but who handles the life happens stuff that happens to kids?
Our career specialists.
Okay.
They work 24/7. They have an office in the school. The kids have their email, Facebook account, whatever it is to get a hold of them. The career specialists have it.
Okay.
So we also track our kids after graduation. And you know, so we know where the kids are. And there are things that come up. If I told you stories about the summer, you would be like, ooh. But that's why our career the bread and butter of my intermediary is the career specialist. If I have a great career specialist, I can place 350 kids.
How long do you track them?
Well, it depends on what track they're in. So we do a survey, which Andy Sum uses the data from, a year after graduation. And then some kids, if they go into our Success Boston program, we track them for another 4 years. So there was, April, be gentle, be gentle.
You talked about the ask for summer jobs. What are some of the other asks that your employer activity managers?
Employer account manager? Yep.
Yes.
So I'll have handouts too. So we ask for job shadow experiences. That's their first test. So job shadow is usually, this year it's January 31st. It's usually that first around there. We send 1,000 kids out. Not only do we send them to employers, but we send them to very important state officials or chamber members or whoever, just to have them take a look. You know, if I was in Sacramento, John would get a job shadow in January, whether he wanted one or not, but he would be nice enough to take one. Because it shows the skills of the kids, and it's free. Take the kid from 9 to 1, give them lunch, and the kid can talk about what they saw. They can come back to the school, and the employers hopefully will be like, hey, this isn't that bad. These kids have skills. This was easy. I'm supported. We also do mock interviews during April vacation. So we have about 400 or 500 kids go through that. So we ask employers, you don't have to, this is another free event, just we need your time. It's usually a morning or an afternoon to interview, 6 to 10 kids, depending on, how much time you have. That really helps our kids. Our kids are not great at interviewing. They clam up, they start sweating, who's chewing gum, who's dressed with crazy earrings or whatever it might be. I'm like, oh. So you can either host that event at your office or you can do it at our office. We have offices set up. We also do guest speakers. We want to get kids really enthused about careers, college, whatever. So we have career speaker series. And then schools have been starting. We have a few schools that do advisory boards. So that would just help them, talk about work-based learning plan opportunities and what else they were looking for, and also have more interaction with the teachers. The advisory boards happen at the school, or unless an employer wants to host it, but we try to have it at the school so headmasters, teachers, and others can all be there. Wait, so that young man right there, oh, sorry. I'll get to this young man right over there was raising his hand.
So I've been struggling on how to approach the issue that's on this table for this meeting in California in our time.
Yep.
And the most dynamic and destabilizing reality is the introduction of digital media, mobile tools, wireless tools into our culture. So I think to myself, okay, that's an entry point that is strategic because it's out of control, it's ubiquitous, and it's transforming everything we understand and all of our relationships. So my particular focus is to build on awareness, skill set development, and organization to advance digital media, arts, and technology inside the school system, across the entire school system, where traditionally this has been seen as an ICT vertical inside a set of 14 specific verticals that have to do with bicycles and corn and health and so on and so forth. The question of how to make that transition, then what that leads to is this. The sector intermediary could potentially be an establishment operation that continues to operate within the framework of a 19th and 20th century educational model and communication model, not based on an understanding of an unknowable career future for a whole lot of people. And the need to create places where oxygen is happening below the sector intermediary without breaking up the strategic unity of the campaign of pathways for success. So I wanted to ask Jim, I've been watching, I've been part of the Next Economy now for a couple of years with the quartet and part of the education committee for the Metro Chamber, and we're nowhere near where Boston is. Where you're at, in very large part, is where competent schools are at, really competent schools are at, that have built partnerships. Here in California, we have anarchy because every single school district is constitutionally guaranteed to be an independent entity, an independent barony, which makes a lot of our work very, very difficult. And secondly, with this transformation in technology, which is not well understood, the conversation is not in the right place. And the mobilization of parent power, citizen power, and kid power is not even on the table to be discussed, where they will be the drivers, because the establishment in the school system doesn't get it. They don't get it at such a deep level that even though they can talk about digital media, they can talk about ICT, they don't really understand the cultural impact that it is actually having in our children. So the question is, what kind of subordinate organizational forms are essential to build, like for example your 4 major areas, 5 major areas, agriculture, ICT. How do we organize politically in a region, in a sector region, to provide real oxygen and real support to build those organizational content areas underneath the umbrella of this thing that could potentially tamp that out accidentally?
Well, let me attempt to answer that. You know, we have developed in a very thoughtful way what we think the region's best assets are from a business and growth and employment perspective.
Right.
So those are the clusters that I mentioned. We think that we've got some competitive advantages in all of those, in all of that space. And I think if you looked at those, you probably know somebody that's working in that space right now. And, you know, something like food and ag. Let's take that for an example. How do we develop a deep nexus with respect to potential employees that are coming through our public education systems right now? Given that everything is so immediate to them, and I know this a bit because I've got teenagers, and you know that's how they live their life now, is through their cell phones and their smartphones and whatnot. And how do you develop an interest and an understanding of what a career could mean in that particular space? And I think in a lot of ways it helps. I think in a lot of ways it helps engage those students. If you can be thoughtful about delivering content through that media that's directed to those young people, to really turn them on about a career in let's say in ag and food. And there's a lot of great stories in that particular space, just such as there are in clean energy or information technology or health sciences. I think it creates an immediacy if you do it well. It creates an immediacy with respect to the subject matter. And
you have a big machine in ag. You have a well-established 200-year-old machine, advocacy and lobby machine in the ag system. But now go to ICT and go to digital media. which is much more unexplored and much less capably organized as an infrastructure to advance the agenda. I'm talking about funding now. If that 250 million comes in,
You know, we'll get to that, but there's like 1,000 other questions, so I just want to make sure, because I know we're running out of time.
I'm addressing, before NextEd, there was LEAD, I don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
Same organization.
Well, we did something very similar to what you did. I was actually part of Placer County's grant, not Sacramento. But both of those kind of went away. I don't really know. But we did the same thing. We had the first special. We may have not done the employer account managers, but we had individuals that went around to all the schools. So, you know, again, I don't know what happened to. I know the money shifted. That was what I remember. That was 13 years ago.
Yeah, there were some grants that came through that were very specific with respect to that organization that were very targeted, directed, and you know, the strategy is to really take NextEd now and to be more of a regional force to really work on policy issues with respect to the region and developing career academies and pathways. And it's you know, to me, it's really exciting to hear about what you're doing, Josh, because you're where the rubber meets the road. You're creating those connections. You're turning on those young people who really see what it's like to work in a bank, you know, or what it's like to work in a healthcare institution. So I think as we look at our region, as we're moving forward, that's one of my takeaways from this meeting, is to really understand that there are great examples like Josh out there that really creates a deep nexus with respect to our I'm not just going to say public school systems, but all school systems with respect to engaging with employers in actual jobs. And we do have a lot of great examples of that happening, but nothing that's this focused, if you will. That's
And
this
also,
focused.
and the reason they asked me to come is that you guys have a really big opportunity here with this money. I mean, you give me $225 million. If I win the lottery, I probably will have it. But this is an opportunity to build something and then show why it's useful. And it's not going to happen, or you're not going to be able to measure it if everyone goes on their own way. So you need basically, if you hear Bob and Nancy and others, is that there needs to be the great minds in here, probably everyone in here is smarter than I am, to get together and figure out, when you do these, you know, proposals, I'm going to partner with this, I'm going to do this, and then we are going to fund these positions so that we can do measurement, we can talk about alumni, and you can actually say, instead of looking at an exit survey that 80% of your kids went to high school, we don't do that in Boston. Exit surveys are nice for us because it gives us another way to contact the kids, but we actually contact them a year after graduation to see if they actually went. Because all these kids, they think they're going to college, right? You all in graduation, yay, everyone's happy, let's go to the after party, we're good. And they all think they're going to college until they get their first bill, or something in life happens, you know, your parents get divorced, or you realize that your grant didn't come along and all of a sudden you thought you owed $6 grand, but now it's 16. You know, or you thought you were going to a school and you just can't figure out transportation, whatever it is. So this is an opportunity to build an intermediary that will help you guys, because there's so much good stuff going on in California. I mean, Boston's just lucky because we have a history of having this vehicle. But you guys, if you put it together, you can show just as much that we're doing, that you're doing in Boston. You know what I mean? This is, but you know, you need people. You can't depend on the employers to do all this stuff, and you can't, you know, the school people can't do it. It's hard enough to educate these kids. Someone needs to be dedicated to finding work-based learning plan opportunities, documenting where the kids work, talk about who you're servicing, you know what I mean? Because as you guys grow, people are always going to ask a question, who do you serve? So the first thing for me is I serve BPS kids, but then our board and council want to know more information. How many boys of color do you serve? How many dropouts do you serve? How many, and we could go on and on and on. So this is important that everyone kind of gets out of their silo a little bit and then thinks about, when you're putting these grants together, who is going to broker, measure, connect, and then it's not on here, sustain. And we've talked about this with the INET conference, is that in Boston, the way we are sustaining it is that we have a line item in the state budget. So our career specialists are funded every year. We have to go through this budget fight, but at least we know it's there. It's a line item in the state budget. It's called connecting activities. We also get money because Boston Public Schools value us. We also get another chunk of money from them. We get corporate dues. So we have different funding sources to make this happen. And Andy Sum then uses our data, and other people use our data. And then, you know, I get to travel around to different cities that would like to do this. You know, Philadelphia has a great program. They have more public money. You know, the last thing I do is ask for money. I'd rather have you hire my kids than you give me a check for 20 grand to put them in a community-based organization. They're not getting the same experience. So, sorry, I don't know, but we're talking about intermediaries, and we're talking about what you guys have the opportunity to do. If we can all get it together, this is one of the things you have the opportunity to do.
Let me just add on from an employer perspective on what you just said, which I think is so important. We don't want to have 5, 10 people calling us about a program or 5 or 10 programs coming at us, especially if we're a larger organization. And we want to just have a single source. For us, anybody that's a regional player, which 5-star is, we want to have a single source coming to us for folks that want to engage for whatever reason with respect to workforce development and or, you know, internship opportunities. It makes things easy for us to manage. And if it becomes difficult, if it becomes a matter in which we have to devote a significant amount of resources to manage, suddenly it ratchets down the level of importance. But if there's the easy button someplace there, if there's one-stop shopping, it's helpful.
And that's part of our challenge, I think. We have people who want to make sure everybody gets a piece of the pie. The pie's not big enough.
Young lady, and then I'll come over here.
Are you part of a group of intermediaries, or do you feel a need for what you're doing at Boston State to be connected to other groups, so there's some consistency about how you work with, say, national employers, how you look at the field as a whole?
Yeah, so we are part of a national group called, it's called INET, it's called the Intermediary Network. We meet twice, the leadership meets once in the fall, and then we have a big conference in the spring to talk about what's going on nationally, talk about funding, grant opportunities. April, help me out, there's other things. She's on the board of INET too.
Yeah.
Talk about policy, also talk about what's going on around from DC, from a national level, about where the money's coming from. So, but then we're also part of a group, you know, just in and around Boston. So we have to talk to our, you know, different WIBs in other places like that in and around Boston, because everyone says, oh, Boston gets this, but we also refer people. Boston's very expensive to live in and have real estate, so a lot of our companies are moving out. I want those companies, to, if they move out, to hire kids from the suburbs or other cities. So, I mean, this is a workforce development thing, so that's why we're part of it.
I just have a quick question about your career specialists. Are they counselors/case managers or just counselors?
No, so I call them career counselors.
Okay.
They're career specialists, but they're not employed by the school. They're employed by me. We just have offices in the school.
Going back to the question that you asked, your last question, the reason I ask if they're case management, do they handle the life experience situations that some of the students make?
During the summer they do, because some of their counselors are gone. But during the school year, they're another adult, and they usually have offices in guidance or student support that they are referring kids or, you know, doing things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but in the summer, all bets are off. Like, you got to see how crazy it gets. But, you know, life happens, and as long as they know they have someone to talk to and listen to. You know, unfortunately, we have a lot of kids, some kids that are in foster care, and they're, you know, couch surfing and things like that. It happens, you know, but we just need to make sure that they can hold it together for the good of themselves. And also our employers take a lot of big interest in them. They know when a kid looks a little disheveled and what's going on. This is a kid that never had a blip. So then they can call the career specialist, and that's part of the team effort.
Thank you.
There was another one over here.
So that Can you tell me what it looks like for those career specialists during the school year when they're on campus? Are they working with kids during the school day?
Yes.
Do they go into classrooms?
Yep. So it also depends on the school. So there are some schools that want us to work with kids either during advisories or before school or after school. But a lot of the schools will have us, even, it's not called teaching a class, but doing stuff during a 2-block period so that we can get them job ready. We work with a lot of the computer classes because, you know, Boston has a lot of IT. We bring in IT professionals to get the kids really kind of enthused. A quick story, we have one of our flagship programs is called Tech Apprentice. Our smaller IT firms were having a hard time taking high school kids. They were like, we don't need them. You know, we're in the hub of college kids. We can get kids for free. I'm like, all right, whatever. Take one for job shadow. So these kids, you know, I sent ringers, just to let you know, I always do that. If you're going to work with an employer, send ringers. So this guy was, you know, corporate business guy, and he was like, oh, you guys say you know IT security, you this, and the kid raised his hand. I think he was from Russia or I don't know where. He goes, I can break into your system. And the guy was like, what? He's like, 9 minutes I can break in. The guy looks at the group, he had 5 kids, he goes, if you guys break in, you all have summer jobs. You all have summer jobs if you can break in. So the kid's like, Bruno, he goes, oh, why are you taking this medication? And he's already in the guy's face. He was like, get out of there, get out of there. Like, he was like, that is not good medication. But, so these kids can do that. And so one of the things is that we want to kind of have employers also come in during the day to do guest speakers. And we try to do partnerships with schools. So a school or, you know, might have 2 or 3 partners, you know, so, you know, State Street Bank will hire a lot of kids, but they're usually from 3 or 4 schools to also make it easier for them so that we can organize the hiring, the onboarding, the drug screens and things like that. So it depends, and we do a lot of stuff during breaks, free time, things like that.
John, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
How do you deal with the transportation issues?
So it's for us in Boston, it's not as difficult, but it is difficult. So anywhere we can get a kid via public transportation, we will send them. So a lot of our kids, if you look at our list, and we try to keep this quiet, but a lot of our kids don't work necessarily in Boston. The T, what we call our public transportation system, will get them a lot of different places. So, you know, if you have to work in the suburbs in the summer, that's where you're going to go as long as it's by T. Our kids very rarely have cars. They don't even have licenses. I don't know what's going on with that. That's another job development issue that we're working on because a lot of the cable companies and also say that if we want to hire kids, they got to have licenses. So it's anywhere the T goes, we will send kids. So that means, you know, and it could be far. It could be 12, 15 miles. But if the T gets you out there and then you have to hop on a shuttle, you're gone. Sometimes the employer will pay for the T passes because the T in Boston is not cheap. Or we kind of subsidize it, the PIC does, until they get their first paycheck and then they can get the monthly pass. That's a great question though, because transportation, especially when we go around to different regions, is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue here, probably a lot more profound than I would argue in Boston.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the history of how the program in Boston started, because we're here in, you know, growing pains, evolution, whatever you want to call it. I mean, was this program the only show in town? Was there a competitive fight to the end? I mean,
so we're
tell us how you got here.
Okay, so I'll go a quick history lesson. Many moons ago, when I was a little young lad, obviously Boston was going through some racial problems. The presidents and CEOs of the major companies in Boston, they were called the Vault at that point, and they decided, we got to do something here. We have to engage the community. We have people that are completely segregated from this financial district and healthcare area. What are we going to do? So they decided to come together and basically start the PIC. They started the Boston Industry Council, and what they all did was they decided to throw in jobs. So they knew high school kids were really struggling, that the schools were struggling. This was right after busing. So, you know, people were leaving the system. So why would you want to send your kid to these schools? So these presidents and CEOs started the PIC. And then slowly and surely, it started with 300 jobs in, I'm making up the date, 1981 or 79. And it's grown. Before 9/11, we actually placed 5,000 kids in internships and jobs. That's when they were giving jobs away. Like, you breathed on a mirror, you could get a job. So, but, you know, now where we are is at 3,000. But it started by presidents and CEOs that realized that the city was so torn apart and so not right with, you know, employment. Also, the public schools were a mess, and there was no engagement from the community. People were living in Boston, but not sending their kids to go to school there. So that's where this started, and we also, so then you also had to build and measure and show your success. So, you know, we've had to, you know, do that. One thing about the PIC is we are not the only game in town. So if you look at the Mayor's Summer Jobs Campaign in Boston, they'll say that we have 10,000 kids working. 30-something hundred will be PIC kids. He also puts in money to fund kids to work at community-based organizations, which would be about 3,400 other kids. We also have something called ABCD, which is, that's based on financial need. They'll work in community-based organizations as well. That number varies depending on federal money and other stuff. And then we also have smaller groups placing kids, usually in community-based organizations. The Housing Authority has some for kids at risk. And then we also have something from John Hancock, who participates with us, but John Hancock also sponsors 400 kids to work in community-based organizations. So we're not the only game in town. It wouldn't be fair to. We work with BPS kids. ABCD just has to be a resident and financially income. The Mayor's Youth Fund, which is the other 34, you just have to apply online. You can go to Cristo Rey School, you can go to a private school, whatever it is, so you can get something. There was another question.
I have a related question, a follow-up question to that. In Massachusetts and Boston, do you have workforce investment boards like we do in California, or is your organization recipient of federal workforce investment outcomes?
Yeah, we have workforce investment boards. We don't get the funds.
So is that another competing group? Similar kinds of services that you're providing?
I mean, some of that, kind of, not really. We kind of leave that alone. You know, in Boston also, since we have the PIC, if other regions need it, we leave it alone. You know, what we do too with the line item is we hopefully will increase the line item because other regions in Massachusetts want to do what we do, and they're trying to build it up. We call them the gateway cities. So, you know, Worcester, I don't know if people are familiar, but some of the smaller cities that are really struggling because they've lost their manufacturing base are looking to bring in companies and also inspire kids to do this. Sorry.
You said the career specialists are employed by the PIC.
Yep.
Who employs the employer?
Me too.
You do too. Oh.
Yeah.
And
So
your budget?
What was that?
Your budget?
People throwing me. You know, we're not supposed to. No.
We're writing grants.
Yeah, I know you're writing grants. So I have 20 people. I get about $950,000 from the Boston Public Schools, and then we get around 9 something from the line item.
You pay wages, work experience
Do we pay wages?
for the youth that are getting jobs?
So we do get some public money for kids that are not able to work in the private sector. We place about 300 or 400 of those kids in community-based organizations. So if we try our hardest and Jamal can't get a job at State Street or something else, and this poor kid's gone on 3 or 4 interviews, just can't get it together, or we have Corey issues, we use some public money to place them.
That comes out of your budget.
That comes out of, yeah, we get foundation grant money. That's a different, we get foundation money. So foundation money to hard to serve youth. We try to place them in private sector. So the one last thing I want to say is that in Boston, what we tell people is the more the private sector does, the deeper we can go with the public money. So, because in some areas, and I'm going to talk about some cities, but some cities, the good kids get all the public money because they're the first to apply, they all have their act together, that's how it goes. So what we tell people is the more the private sector does, the deeper we can go with the public money. So, you know, if we can get 3,000 jobs, that's 3,000 kids that are not going to apply for these small amount of public money that they probably will get because their parents are waiting with all their documentation and they're ready to roll. So the more we can do private sector-wise, the deeper we can dig with the public sector money. And that's how we kind of try to nudge people a little bit.
So the nudge from the private sector is in jobs, not in funding?
I very rarely will ask for money. Because if you ask for money, they're never going to hire kids. It's just,
that's interesting.
Yeah. My boss, if he was here, he always is like, you know, if they're not going to hire, maybe, I never ask for money. Because once they write that check, then they're going to write the check forever. And, you know, we've lost a couple of people to that because they got to the mayor. They were like, oh, we really can't hire, downturn economy, 25 grand. 25 grand is 12 kids. You know what I mean? State Street Bank does 500 grand. You know what I mean? So 25 grand to them is lunch. I've been to some of their events, it's lunch. No, seriously, 25 grand is ridiculous. Like, for me personally, like, I want kids to be able to see professionals that may or may not look like them, use the best technology, be able to have someone look at their college application and read their essay, and stay with them longer. That's not what 25 grand is going to do for you. Not that I don't take it, but I really want them not to think of other options besides. If you want to hire 30 kids and then give me 25 grand, now we can talk. Now we can have a nice conversation, I'll get you some, but don't just write me a check for 10 grand is like rude to me. You know what I mean? Don't quote me, and I know I'm on. But 10 grand is, 10 grand is like, really? I mean, 10 grand is 5 kids for the summer. You know, some of these companies, they have trips to different places. It costs them 60. I always ask for a lot, and then we can see what we can do.
That's a good question. What happens? Who covers the students if they get injured on the job, like workman's comp? Do they fall under the school business?
Yeah. So
insurance. Who covers it?
So we have luckily only had a couple of incidences where the kids might like slice a finger, whatever it is. So they're covered under their own insurance, you know, their own insurance, or if it's during the school year, they're under the school, you know, their insurance. And then in the summer, it might be, it depends on their job and what we've signed on or off of, it could be the employer. It all depends on the industry and what we've had them sign. So some of our employers also have to have kids that are 18 plus, just for that reason. So they can't be at a certain, like, you know, if it's a construction site or working with certain tools, it has to be for that.
Do you guys support any school-based enterprises? So thinking about internship experience not being just out at a particular workplace, but, you know, one concern my organization has about bringing this to scale and trying to provide a quality internship experience for all students is that some of it may need to look a little different than what we think of as a traditional internship experience. And so wondering if you support any school-based enterprises or any other type of internship experiences that aren't at the bank or...
We do.
What's that look like?
So with some of the public money, we actually have kids work at Court Street, which is the Boston Public School headquarters, so that they could go there and work. We're also looking into asking City Hall, since they might need help, if they could do something like that, or if they could be paired. We want the kids to kind of step out of their zone, so we don't want them like doing a job in their school. But if they could do something close, like maybe at another school or an elementary school or at Public Works facility or something like that, we try to be creative if we need to be. How do I put this? We want to get kids act, they don't know how to code switch, right? So if you have something at the school, that's why we have to be careful about when we do stuff after school, bringing in guest speakers, because it's wild. You know how after school is. Kids are running around, you're like, whoa. They're not code switching, and they're losing something there. So what we'd like to them is step out of that zone, at least be able to put a shirt and tie on the fly, get to the subway, and go somewhere else, just so that they can kind of get into that mind frame. It's not, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying from my experience, I want kids to be able to code switch, meaning that I can joke around with you, you can play basketball, but all of a sudden you got to get to your internship. You better hustle, throw your tie on, or whatever it is, and then be able to shake someone's hand, look them in the eye, and get ready to do work that you left on your plate yesterday. I think it's really important. That our employers are telling us, and we've seen this too, because I've been at the pit many years. I used to have hair.
No.
Yeah, I used to have luscious locks like yours. We're finding that our kids need more attention to be more job ready. It's taking my career specialists, and I'm yelling at them now at this point. Like, why are these kids not ready? They're like, these kids are off the chain. Like, they have no idea. But it's also because they are not seeing the habits of paid work from home. So they have either one parent not working, or no one working, or there's stuff that's going on with them. So they don't see that they have, if you have to be up at 7:30 to make it in the summer, you better be there. And they're also not seeing the consequences until it's kind of too late. You know, when I was a career specialist, I used to fire 2 kids in the first week right away. Fire one loud kid who thought he knew a lot, and one really popular kid that would get the information to everybody else. So I'd say, okay, you know, I come in and I'm like, I'm not hearing good stuff. I slam the door and like, you know, I'd be at some company. They'd be like, oh, I'm like, guess what? You guys leave, go back to your cubicles. I don't want to hear a word from you. You two, you're fired. You would think that it was like the craziest thing I've ever said. But I want to see some tears, and I want people to take responsibility. Now, it's hard to do that because now I got to try to figure out, do I get them another job or not, or what do I do? Because I do want them to have that reaction, but no one nowadays gets fired. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, let's give them another chance. How many chances are we going to give somebody? Okay? Am I right? People are laughing, but...
No, we fire. Yeah, so I don't know. We fire.
I fire. I love firing people. Everyone's like, you're getting too excited about this. I love it. I want to fire someone. So I'm just saying that this is the kind of the stuff that we were trying to teach our kids. I know time is up. John, has been awesome to have, and thank you. I also have handouts if people want to learn about back and forth on summer jobs and other stuff. You can hand them out.